You're dirt. We think you're dirt, Paul.
Who is we?
The West, all the superpowers, everything you believe in, Paul. They think you're dirt. They think you're dung. You're worthless.
I'm afraid I don't understand what you are saying, sir.
Oh, come on, don't bullshit me, Paul. You're the smartest man here. You got them all eating out of your hands. You could own this freaking hotel, except for one thing. You're black. You're not even a nigger. You're an African.
The documentary film Dahomey is a story of return, the restitution of stolen royal treasures. The 26 artifacts were among thousands taken by French colonial troops in the late 19th century from the Kingdom of Dahomey, which is now the Republic of Benin in West Africa. The loot was displayed in Paris, but in 2021 the artifacts were carefully loaded into crates and flown back home, a journey that the French-Senegalese film director Mati Diop captures in her new documentary. The film won the coveted Golden Bear Prize earlier this year at the Berlin Film Festival. And Mati Diop joins us now from our studios at NPR West. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
I have read that you felt it was your duty to make this film. How so?
Yeah, in duty, I don't want to make it sound too heavy either, because it was the most fantastic challenge and journey and experience as a filmmaker. But I felt that it was very important to document this historical moment. Most of the archives from Africa have been filmed by colonizers, and so I think it's very important for us to take in charge through cinema our stories, and so this is what I meant by duty.
This is a documentary, but there are some dramatized moments, and for example, you gave voice to one of the statues. We all bear the same scars, it says, uprooted, ripped out. The spoils of massive plundering. Why did you want to give voice that way to the statues, and how did you infer what they would say?
For me, the most important gesture with doing this film was to give back a story, a voice, a language, a power, a subjectivity to these artifacts that have been dispossessed by their own story. So the first gesture was to make sure these artifacts stop being objectified and could again become subjects with agency, with point of views, with subjectivity. This is also why they've been filmed from the first sequence at Museum of Quai Branly before their departure. They've been filmed in a way that the audience can experience the journey of return from the perspectives of the artifacts.
Large part of your film focuses on students in Benin.
Yes.
Talking about the significance, as they see it, of the return of the royal artifacts. What surprised you most about the back and forth of the students?
What surprised me most has more to do with something very specific about the Beninese culture I discovered there, which was the huge quality of listening within the debate. It was not only people talking to each other, imposing their point of view. So much about that debate is about listening to what the other has to say, which is probably one of the reasons why this debate is so rich and so complex.
Yeah. I wonder how you feel. It is heartbreaking when you take a look at the film and after a while realize that, in all those file drawers and boxes just stored away with nobody seeing it is artwork from Dahomey. But what about the argument I've heard from some museum professionals in places like London, Paris, New York over the years, that at least that kept the artwork intact?
Well, it's hard to say the contrary, but I don't think it's the question. I think to say this is just a way to erase a debate which is social, which is political, and the level of denial on the colonial legacy and responsibility really needs to become a subject in France. They have too much to lose by deconstruct this politic.
Let me ask you this finally. Should European institutions, museums, colleges return all the art that was plundered from colonial times, or is there something to be said for people in Paris being able to see art from Benin?
To me, it's a question that is not a good question. It's exactly the same nature of statement than at least they were saved, at least they are intact. And to ask, should they all be returned, to me is a little bit, there's something a bit perverse about it, because how many artifacts have been returned? We're talking about 26, when we know that more than 1 million of African artifacts have been stolen, have been captured. So to say, should we give them all back, to me, is kind of a provocation. Because it's such a despite for the people who have been dispossessed by these artifacts.
Mati Diop is director of the new film, Dahomey. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Fans of Shohei Ohtani cheered for him back in his home country of Japan after he captured the first World Series title of his career as a member of the Los Angeles Dodgers. The victory comes after the Japanese star made history by becoming the first player ever to hit at least 50 home runs and steal 50 bases in a single season.
During World War II, the U.S. government incarcerated more than 120,000 Japanese Americans at camps across the country. One of the largest was Manzanar in the remote California desert. The camp was mostly demolished after the war, but for the last year, volunteers have been working to restore the baseball diamond that incarcerees once played on. Last weekend, for the first time since the war, it hosted a game, and NPR's Adrian Florido was in the bleachers.
All right, who's ready to have this very first exhibition game here at the Manzanar Baseball Field?
The face-off was between two well-established Japanese-American amateur teams, the Little Tokyo Giants from Los Angeles against the Templars from the city of Lodi.
Everybody get in here.
Before the first pitch, Dan Kwong, first baseman for the Giants, spoke to his team in a huddle.
You were the first people to play ball in over 80 years. Think about all the spirits who have played on this field. Let it hit you however it hits you, and have a good time.
Yes, sir.
Hey, all right.
Let's go. Hey, everybody. Hey, Kwong on 3. 1, 2, 3. Kwong!
The Manzanar site is now administered by the National Park Service, but Kwong, an artist from the city of Santa Monica, was the leading force behind its ball field's restoration. He worked with volunteers for a year to clear tumbleweeds and rebuild the backstop. It's an all-dirt diamond in the desert, just like during the war. 2 benches for dugouts, simple wooden bleachers. There's no outfield fence. If the ball lands in the tumbleweeds, it's a home run. An old camp guard tower still looms over the field. Dan Kwong's parents were among the 10,000 people held at Manzanar.
The reason why people were here, put in this camp, is because it was a time when Japanese heritage people were hated and feared in this country and distrusted in this country. And yet, they still were going to play the American game.
Carson, shorten the swing up a little bit, okay?
Marty Sakata is manager of the Lodi JACL Templar.
It's amazing to be out here in a field basically the same as during camp. This all dirt, rocky, slow field, but with tumbleweeds, it's fantastic. It is fantastic.
Segregation before the war kept Japanese Americans out of white baseball leagues, so they formed their own. Sakata's team has been active since 1915. Except when its players were sent to Manzanar during the war. Mike Furutani is a pitcher for the Templars. His uncles were incarcerated.
A lot of the people say a lot of things that sustained the community while they were in the camp was baseball. It was the thing that reminded them that they were still American. Right? It sucked, but they could still play ball and forget for 3 hours all the horrible things that are happening.
Furutani is one of the older players on his team. He says before today, many of the younger ones had only heard stories about the places where their ancestors were locked up.
But I don't think they've ever experienced how desolate and how, horrible the situation was, the injustice.
20-year-old Kainoa Sue is a star hitter on the Giants. He got the first hit and scored the first run of the game.
I got butterflies in my stomach right now just talking about it. I have lineage that was in this camp, so now being able to play on the same field in the same general area that they were in, it's insane.
Melinda Yamane Crawford was in the bleachers cheering on her son Robert, and also thinking about her dad, who served in the war, and a friend who had been locked up here.
It's a mix of emotions. You can tell I'm probably emotional right now because I'm honoring my father, I'm honoring my friend, but I'm also enjoying the game of baseball and watching my son carry on that tradition.
So who won the first game played on Manzanar's diamond in over 80 years? The Little Tokyo Giants. Adrian Florido, NPR News, Manzanar, California.
And I want to also talk about, in this case, they talked about mental health, but also gun control. And we have to begin to understand, I say you can't understand the gun mania if you don't understand racism, white supremacy. The gun is the answer to conscious and or subconscious, the answer, the response to the white collective feeling they can be genetically annihilated by black genetic material. And the gun is a great equalizer. I encourage everybody to get a copy of the ISIS papers and read.
To combat gun violence, dozens of U.S. cities use a gunfire detection tool called ShotSpotter. Microphones dotted around town capture the sound of gunshots, which can help police pinpoint where they came from and get there to investigate. But the technology is controversial, and some cities have rejected it. Member station WBEZ's Chip Mitchell reports that Chicago let its ShotSpotter contract expire, and the city is now looking for something new.
Chicago has long struggled with gun violence. 7 years ago, city officials had high hopes for technology they'd been trying out in the 2 police districts with the most shootings.
It is a good tool in terms of getting us to that scene a lot quicker.
Eddie Johnson, he was the police superintendent. He said the technology was ShotSpotter.
What this does is pinpoint where that shot came from, and we respond quicker because we don't have to wait for the 911 call. So typically now, it'll be real-time deployment.
Johnson said the goals were arrests and violent crime reduction. Within a few years, more than 2,000 audio sensors covered about half the city, and Chicago was paying the company, now called Sound Thinking, roughly $10 million a year. Sound Thinking says more than 170 jurisdictions use its gunfire detection system. While cops and others find it useful, some researchers are questioning its effectiveness. Chicago Inspector General Deborah Witzberg told the city council about findings by her office.
We looked at about 50,000 ShotSpotter alerts, and we found that in only about 9% of those did CPD make a record of collecting evidence related to a gun crime.
Other research found problems too. Economist Michael Topper of the Social Science Research Council says the technology actually delays help for 911 callers in Chicago.
Police officers are responding about 2 minutes slower to get on scene. This slower response time is actually going to result in fewer arrests occurring at these 911 calls.
Still others complain that because Chicago's ShotSpotter sensors were mostly in black and Latino neighborhoods, the system contributed to over-policing them. That caught Brandon Johnson's ear before he won last year's mayoral election. During his campaign, he promised to pull the plug on the gunshot technology. Other cities, including Atlanta and New Orleans, rejected ShotSpotter too. But in Chicago, there was a big fight about the decision. Some city council members, researchers, and the company itself argued ShotSpotter, even if it hadn't reduced crime, had saved lives of gunshot victims. Alderman Anthony Beal recalled a cop who was gunned down last year.
Ariana Preston. If it had not been for ShotSpotter, she would still be laying in that front yard. We need this tool in this city.
But the mayor didn't change his mind. He let the contract expire. Now Chicago's looking for different law enforcement technology. Besides gunshot detection, companies are offering vehicle license plate readers. They would enable the police to generate a list of cars near a gunfire scene. Texas A&M University law professor Hannah Block-Weba says that's controversial too.
Civil libertarians are not thrilled about pervasive location tracking, but no court has said that it's unconstitutional.
She says Chicago and other cities have to decide whether their police officers should spend more time responding to gunshot alerts or doing things like getting to know more people in the communities where they work, beefing up shooting investigations, or just answering 911 calls. For NPR News, I'm Chip Mitchell in Chicago.
Cali, you might catch me in Atlanta, looking like a boss. New Orleans into Miami, party in New York, Texas, I be screwed up. Chi-town, I be really pimping, but nothing like my hometown. Now forever living with me.
They come from all around the world for the.
Don't it sound never come clear? What more can I say? Welcome to LA.
Welcome back, everybody. 7:43 here on a Monday morning. So, people that are living in a historic black community near downtown LA are afraid this morning. This after threats of their neighborhood getting destroyed for a metro tunneling project.
Yeah, Brooke Thomas is live at Lafayette Square with the latest. Good morning, Brooke.
Hey there, good morning. Yes, so the Metro K-Line expansion will add new rail service from Miracle Mile to Hollywood to West Hollywood, and that's a good thing for the city overall, right? Of course it is. The thing is, the people who live here in this neighborhood, this is Lafayette Square, they are worried that their historically predominantly black neighborhood could be sacrificed for the city's future.
It keeps us up at night. Just the idea that someone could just come in and... Sorry.
Don't be sorry.
Why this neighborhood? Why this black and brown neighborhood? This is an historically preserved neighborhood for a reason, right? There is a lot of history here. And it just seems like these are the neighborhoods that are the first to be offered up.
Robbie Reed and her neighbor, Lauren Jackson Smith, have been fighting to push LA Metro to change course on the K-Line Northern Extension Plan. The proposed route would tunnel under their historic neighborhood.
I immediately think eminent domain. And that may not be the case. We just don't know.
Lauren says her grandparents moved to Lafayette Square in the 50s after having to leave what was then LA's Sugar Hill neighborhood when the California Highway Commission approved the 10 freeway. What is now a vital transportation route destroyed Sugar Hill, a once wealthy, hard-fought-for black neighborhood. Seeing this specific notice regarding Metro's latest plans sent her in a tailspin.
It's a concern, and I think it's rightfully so, because we don't have an understanding of what those words mean. What does easement and acquisition mean?
Neighbors here tell me they've learned they'll lose a grocery store, they're going to lose a drugstore, which leads them to their biggest concern, that some of them might lose their homes.
It's like, okay, this is history repeating itself. This sounds like eminent domain to me. This sounds like it's being described using other words, but we're all somewhat, smart. We can figure that out. If you need something, you go get it, right?
We understand that fear. We understand that concern. It's our homes that we're talking about. However, we have no intentions of purchasing any of the properties in that neighborhood, nor are we taking down or demolishing any of the properties in that neighborhood.
Metro's Anthony Crump acknowledges the phrase acquisition or easements could cause concern, but he says there's nothing to worry about.
The acquisitions that we're talking about are underground easements. So in essence, we'll be building a tunnel underneath the neighborhood, and we need to acquire the right to go underneath that particular neighborhood. That's the only acquisition that we'll be doing in that neighborhood.
Crump points to what he calls Metro's strong and long history of safely tunneling underneath neighborhoods, telling me the analysis shows there will be no impact to homes.
We recognize that neighborhoods, black and brown neighborhoods in particular, have really suffered in the past under public infrastructure projects, and we're not going to be doing that in this case. And we are determined to not repeat those mistakes of the past.
Robbie and Lauren are not convinced, telling telling me they need more proof and assurance as they sit at neighborhood matriarch Ellen Farwell's dining room table.
More than anything, this neighborhood is like coming into a little oasis. We walked over this neighborhood for years before we bought a house here. It means family. It means just good neighbors. It's something happens emotionally to people when they turn that corner.
This is my generational wealth for my family. When I moved here, it was to have the house in the family forever, not just an investment to flip. And most of the families here are like that. They've been here for many, many years, many generations, and that's what we want to create.
And, you know, as you can see, we're still, even after this conversation and multiple meetings these neighbors here have been able to have with the city question and answer sessions, they're still sort of at an impasse. Metro says the project right now, there are no plans to impact homes, giving that guarantee to neighbors. And the neighbors I talked to essentially say they don't believe them. They say they haven't been given information or proof or paperwork that shows them that that's even possible with what's being planned. Metro then points back to what they say is their history of other projects that have gone well in other communities. And then, of course, the neighbors push back on that with the history that hasn't gone well just when it comes to different neighborhoods that really don't exist as they once were. So it's a story that we will be following. And I want to show you this. We want you to jump in on the conversation. Our Fox LA TikTok page, it's actually fox.la on TikTok. If you look at what's on your screen right now, there's actually a QR code, and you can open up your phone and scan that QR code. If you just open up the photo app on your phone, the camera app, you can scan that code. It'll take you right to our Fox LA page. I just talk to you a little bit more, give you a little bit more history into why this neighborhood is so important to the people who live here, to the city overall, and also a little more on the city's response. I'll send things back to you in the studio, Melvin and Jen.
I think that with this story too, Brooke, and I think you did a great job of really highlighting the history and the relevance and the importance of the preservation of... Oh, she's gone. Oh, I thought she was still there for... Oh, there she is. Okay. I didn't see you. I think that I think you did a great job of highlighting the history and the legacy of the Sugar Hill community, of the Lafayette Square community, and what it meant by way of access. Especially back in the day, a lot of the black movie stars, they couldn't live in Beverly Hills or Hancock Park. They lived in those areas. And so there's such a long-standing history of tradition and of access that's important to preserve.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that all of, just facts really and research have shown us when it comes to economical impact is that one of just like the number one things that really helps when it comes to racial wealth disparity, it's a lack of home ownership in certain communities. And so, you have these people here telling me that they have done everything they can to try and knock down some of those barriers within their own families, and they are understandably worried. On the other side, you have the city that says, as of right now, there are no plans to harm them. It's just going to be one of those stories that we are absolutely going to follow. And again, I encourage everyone to go to our Fox LA TikTok page and join in on the conversation, because I've already been looking at some of the comments, and it's interesting to see what, everyone overall, what they think. Back to you.
All right, Brooke, thank you very much. Appreciate you doing that story for us.
You can see the concern there in that neighborhood, especially given the history. It's like words are just words until they're backed up by actions. They need concrete proof this is not going to happen to their home.
That part, right? You can say, but, it's...
when it comes down to it.
Where's the action?
Right.
Yeah, and what are we really talking about? And you're not presenting me with anything, so naturally you understand why the community has great concern about this, right?
And I'm sure we will continue to follow that story very, very closely.
Travis, you know that money we got in the mail this morning?
Yes, sir.
Well, what do you think your grandmama done went and done?
I don't know, Grandma.
Well, she went and she bought you a house.
The country's massive housing shortage is getting worse because some of the most affordable homes are falling apart. NPR's Jennifer Ludden reports that is fueling a push to not only build more housing, but also help people stay in the places they already have.
In rural western Pennsylvania, the tiny borough of Glen Campbell was settled as a coal mining town, and the houses are old.
Melissa?
Yes. Hi.
Melissa and Robert Cox think their cozy but crumbling three-bedroom dates to the 20s or 30s. It was all Melissa could afford when she left a bad marriage with her 3 children. She bought it rent-to-own a dozen years ago, $7,000 total. But it's come with a slew of costly problems.
Just be careful. These steps are okay.
Robert leads the way to the basement.
Sorry about the smell, but up to this point, we had sewage backing up.
He points out an open shower drain in a corner. When it rains, sewage seeps in because the old terracotta piping broke. In another corner, the home's original foundation, made of rocks and cement, is peeling away. Then we head up to the second floor bedrooms.
When I moved in here, it was raining in this room, so we had to completely redo this.
Where was the water coming in?
Over here. There was a closet, which was ripped out, and now it's the boys' room.
Melissa is a family therapist. She got a recent raise to $25 an hour. Robert is on disability for an autoimmune disease. They've struggled to put in new floors, new siding, a new roof.
When I did the roof, my uncle co-signed on a loan for me to do it because I didn't even have any credit.
But they got a cheap roofer and say the work was shoddy. Meanwhile, there's that awful sewage smell.
I would be putting air fresheners in the vents, sticking them everywhere on top of the dehumidifiers. I mean, I've dumped bleach down there to try and take the smell away, vinegar.
Across the U.S., nearly 7 million households face problems like this, and that's likely an undercount. They're disproportionately poor and people of color. Todd Swanstrom of the University of Missouri St. Louis calls it trickle down. Developers build new places for better off people, while older homes deteriorate until they're deemed affordable, like the Cox's home in Pennsylvania. They're often starter homes, but he says lower-income families have nowhere near the means to fix or maintain them.
People have treated the housing quality issue as separate from the affordability issue. And in fact, they are two sides of the same coin.
Nationally, there's a patchwork of home repair programs, federal, state, and nonprofit. But Swanstrom says they're underfunded, with years-long wait lists and lots of restrictions on how the money can be spent.
You might get $5,000 or $6,000 to weatherize your home. But meanwhile, the roof is leaking. Well, what good does it do to weatherize the home if the roof is leaking, right?
A first-of-its-kind program in Pennsylvania aims to help. Whole home repairs was enacted 2 years ago, and here's how it's different. It's more flexible with how money can be spent, and that makes it easier to fix the most urgent problems, then coordinate with other repair programs that could kick in more money. The goal is to help not just families, but entire communities damaged by disrepair.
I see more and more vacant houses yearly just being abandoned.
Lou Ann Zach helps direct planning in Indiana County, where the Cox family lives. She says the whole home repairs program is making a difference, and she thinks of another woman who'd been asking the county for help for decades.
She applied back in the 1990s, and we would always run out of funding before we would get to her. So we finally, with this program, are able to come in.
The state program is funded by pandemic aid, and counties coordinate the repairs. They decide who qualifies based on income and can spend up to $50,000 per household. There's also money for construction workforce training to combat an industry shortage.
And then they're going to put railings here and replace these steps.
In Glen Campbell, Melissa and Robert Cox say repairs on their house will start soon. They'll include making the tiny first-floor bathroom more accessible for Robert and their oldest son, who has Down syndrome and can struggle with walking. Robert says they are grateful.
I just brought all my kids down and we prayed about it, and I thank God for it because it is a blessing. It is a blessing.
Several states have taken up this model for repairs, and a proposal in Congress would scale it nationally. But Pennsylvania lawmakers did not renew funding for it this year, leaving 18,000 homeowners on the wait list. Supporters say they'll try again. For now, counties are spending down what they have. Among the lucky ones is Velma Fischel, whose house was built in 1890.
I've been here since 93.
One day a few years ago, she leaned back in her chair and saw her ceiling and bright pink walls were separating. It turned out the foundation had shifted and the entire back of her house was sagging.
How could I fix it? I'm on Social Security. I mean, I was sick. Chest pains, all I wanted to do was sleep because I got into that funk, you know.
Now her foundation has been replaced. She's also got a new front porch because that was collapsing. And soon they'll fix a gaping hole in her kitchen ceiling.
I can get on with my life in peace and be content and not have to worry about it, you know. I like this stress-free thing.
What a relief, she says, to relax again in her own home. Jennifer Ludden, NPR News, Glen Campbell, Pennsylvania.
As your body grows bigger, your mind must flower. It's great to learn, 'cause knowledge is power. It's Schoolhouse Rockin', the chip on the block, on your favorite Schoolhouse Rock.
Yes, I'm Daniela Guzman. My co-anchor Keith Garvin is on assignment tonight. Well, this is a statewide teacher certification cheating scandal that means fraudulently certified teachers may be in your child's classroom. The crime ring allegedly ran out of Harris County, and tonight, 5 people are facing felony charges so far. We have live team coverage with KPRC2's Bryce Newberry breaking down how this all happened. But we want to start with Mario Diaz at one of the schools where the arrest happened today. Mario.
I'm here at Booker T. Washington High School, where behind me the full court press was on, according to investigators. The operation here was a search for dollars with regards to a fake certification of teachers program. And the man who was allegedly behind it all, the boys' basketball coach. His name, Vincent Grayson, a well-known courtside figure within HISD. Back in 2023, the 57-year-old guided Booker T. Washington to their first ever UIL state tournament. Then earlier this year at the Houston Sports Awards, he was nominated for High School Coach of the Year. Now, Coach Grayson did not operate alone, according to investigators. There were 4 others, including 2 assistant principals, one from Booker T. Washington, the other from Yates High School. So a total of 3 educators overall. And again, according to prosecutors, they worked to falsify at least 200 teacher certifications. I asked an HISD official about the potential impact for parents regarding their children's grades from teachers who may not have been certified.
A child's grades have nothing to do with whether or not the teacher was certified or not certified, or whether or not the teacher obtained their certification fraudulently. I do think the implication for all of us should be that we need to hold everyone to a higher bar. Our leaders, our teachers. HISD does not thinks it's completely unacceptable that this type of conduct could happen in our profession.
Now, school let out here about 90 minutes ago, and there were a line of parents here lined up behind me. I was able to track down one father whose daughter attended school. I spoke to both of them about the arrest, not only the assistant principal, but again, of the boys' basketball coach here at Booker T. Washington.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I don't know what to say about that, but hey, gotta be careful of people.
What was the general reaction by all the kids when the news broke?
I'm not sure, but in my class, everyone was like gathered up, reading it off one phone. Everyone was surprised. And then I guess they just went around the school telling everybody.
A number of students today telling us this all caught them by surprise, but it also caught HISD by surprise. An official says they have launched their own investigation. They're going to be working with investigators to find out some more and identify exactly how many teachers, students, and families overall may have been impacted by this scandal. Live at Booker T. Washington in North Houston, Mario Diaz, KPRC2 News.
I've seen what's around the corner. I've seen what's over the horizon. And I promise you, you niggas have nothing to celebrate. And no, I won't get there with you. I'm going to Canada.
3 years ago, Indigenous leaders in Kamloops, C.O.W.S, and other First Nations revealed disturbing news. Hundreds of unmarked graves on the sites of former residential schools. The government appointed an independent interlocutor. Kimberly Murray's mandate was to engage with communities and make recommendations to ensure that these burial sites are treated with honor, respect, and dignity. And yesterday she delivered her highly anticipated report in an event that began with a ceremony and was attended by survivors.
These children did not just vanish. They were not disappeared by accident. The forced removal and transfer of Indigenous children was Canadian law and Canadian policy. Those in charge of these institutions knew that the children's chances of surviving were low.
Kimberly Murray joins me now from Ottawa. Good morning.
Good morning.
You know, the work you've been doing is really engaging with some pretty painful history. And you say in your report that the greatest and most important obligation that we all have is to the survivors. What do you mean by that?
Oh, absolutely. The survivors are living witnesses, and they're the ones that lived through these atrocities. They're the ones that saw the harms that were inflicted on the other children that never survived. And they're aging, and we're losing them every day. So it's so important that we need to support them as they come forward and share more of these truths so that they can educate Canadians and correct the historical record and ensure that this never happens again in this country.
And you spoke with so many survivors and families who lost loved ones. What did they hope would come out of this process?
Well, first of all, I mean, their number one hope was to find their missing loved one. And, you know, we had some success over the last 2 years in supporting families and finding where their child was buried. But many are still searching and still trying to find where their loved one is.
Kimberly, you report that many children described as missing were in fact disappeared by the state, and that the government is still actively disappearing them by concealing their fate still. That's a very blunt analysis. How do you want to see that change?
Well, first of all, it's a legal analysis, and that's the law, the international law of enforced disappearance. And to change it, we need Canada to step up and change its laws that are blocking access to the archives. We need the government to give full access to the records that will help communities and families find where their loved one's missing. You know, I've been saying this for 2 years. The churches in Canada know that the children died in these institutions. The churches in Canada know that they buried them on the grounds of Indian residential schools. Yet they're not helping the communities find those burial grounds, and they're blocking access to very important information that they're holding on to.
From your study and research over these years, what don't we know about what happened to these children?
Well, we don't know their causes of death. You know, this is very troubling because when we look at some of the records that we have seen and some of the death certificates, they're signed by the Indian agent. The cause of death is identified by the Indian agent. We don't know for what happened to these children, what caused their deaths. We don't know. What we do know is that there were medical experiments that were being done on the children. So how can we have any trust in these records that exist that say the children died of TB? And even if they died of these diseases, Canada knew they were dying of these diseases, and they created the conditions for these children to die in these conditions. And so there has to be some accountability for that as well.
In your report, you rephrase, the typical recommendations and call them obligations, which is a very interesting way to put it. And one of them is you've called for a commission of investigations into the enforced disappearance of Indigenous children and for it to have a 20-year mandate and funding. So what could this commission do that others like the Truth and Reconciliation Commission or your own report have not done?
Well, importantly, it could have powers, and it needs to have powers. Neither my office or the Truth and Reconciliation Commission were granted powers. We had no powers to compel the production of records. We had no powers to go onto sites, and we had no powers to compel testimony. It's really imperative that any kind of commission of investigation into disappeared people have those type of powers so that we can get to the bottom, we can get to the truth.
And what's the significance of a 20-year mandate?
Well, this work is very complex. It's very, it takes a long time to do the research. It takes a long time to do the ground searches. And importantly, we know that it's more than the Indian residential schools recognized under the Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement. We know that kids were transferred between Indian residential schools and between and to other institutions, Indian hospitals, TB sanatorium, reformatories, homes for unwed mothers, places for disabled children. And we know that the children died in these other institutions, and they're buried in graves all across the country. Some are in marked graves, some are in mass graves, unmarked mass graves in cemeteries. The families do not know where their children are. So this is going to take a lot of time when we start looking at all the missing and disappeared children.
And part of that in your report is you're calling for governments and churches to fund Indigenous-led search and recovery efforts that you just mentioned. The federal government has put in place the Residential Schools Missing Children Community Support Fund, and as of March, they've committed, I think, about $200 million to these projects. So what else is needed?
Yeah, and it's important to understand that that fund, an important fund, only includes certain sites. And as I said, there's all these other sites that need to be investigated. And so we can't have these, limitations and barriers. We have to follow the truth wherever it leads us. If a child was taken to a residential school and then transferred to a TB sanatorium, the funding should not stop because you want to continue to search where that child died and find where they're buried. And that's the problem that we have with the funding. And the other thing that I've been saying this as well. We can't treat the search for missing and disappeared children as a program, as a government program. This is a international legal obligation on the state to support the finding of truth. It's part of a reparation package that needs to go for Indigenous communities to be able to heal and to find the truth and to find where the children are buried.
Kimberly, do you think that there is the political will to make these types of things happen and to spend the money that it would take to do so?
I think that the government, I feel that the government wants to be seen as doing something, but is limiting what they should be doing. Appointing me as the special interlocutor is a good example. They came out immediately after Kamloops made their announcement saying they would appoint me, not me, but they would create a special interlocutor. But then they limited my powers. And many people in the community were concerned about the appointment because they thought, well, they're just pretending to be doing something. And they're not taking all the necessary steps that they need to take. And it's part of the sort of piecemeal ad hoc approach that Canada has taken over the years in responding to the harms that have been perpetrated against Indigenous people. We need a more holistic approach for reparations than what we have right now in the country.
You've mentioned the legal basis of which you write, and you've also called for amendments to the criminal code that would make it an offense to deny or minimize the effects of residential schools. What are you saying there, and why is that necessary?
Well, we have to criminalize the incitement of hate against Indigenous people, and we're seeing a rise in the country of denialism in relation to the Indian residential schools and the harms of the system, and the denialism towards the missing and disappeared children. It's very violent, and our laws don't protect hate, and we need to make it very clear in the criminal code that this is not acceptable behavior to victimize Indigenous people in this way.
Just staying with the legal aspects of your 4-volume report, I think you called for an acknowledgement from the government that forcing Indigenous children into residential schools was a crime against humanity that should be adjudicated by the International Criminal Court. This has been tested. It's been rejected by that court once already because of jurisdiction. Why do you believe that it could meet that bar now?
Well, what's important to understand about enforced disappearances, the crime of enforced disappearance, is that it's an ongoing crime. That means it's a crime. It doesn't matter when the child or the person was disappeared, if we still don't know the fate and whereabouts of the person that was disappeared, if the state is concealing the fact and of where the child is buried. And so I say that Canada committed the offense of enforced disappearance yesterday, it's committing it today, and it's going to be committing it tomorrow, because it's not, it's still concealing the fate of the children. It knows, the government knows that these children died in these institutions, and the government knows that there were burial grounds, and they have the records, and they need to produce those records to communities, as well as the churches. The churches were the agents of the state. And so the concealing of the fate makes it an ongoing crime. And I think that the International Criminal Court should be investigating the disappearances of the children in Canada. And I also think that the Working Group Against Enforced Disappearances needs to come visit Canada. They've never been to this country, and it's time that we get that committee to come here and look at the situation of the disappearances.
And from the survivors you've spoken with, how would these kinds of legal measures help with reconciliation?
It will help with accountability. We can't have reconciliation if there's no accountability. Very few perpetrators have been charged and convicted of offenses in relation to Indian residential schools while they were operating and after they closed. Canada has taken many steps to ensure that there is no accountability and no avenue for survivors and Indigenous people to pursue in the international forum by failing to sign many conventions.
Yesterday, Justice Minister Arif Virani received a copy of the report in person from you. We asked for him on the program today. His office told us he won't be doing interviews until they have had time to absorb this report. He did express gratitude for your work and committed to, quote, continue the government's efforts towards reconciliation. What do you want from the Justice Minister and the federal government in the days and weeks ahead?
Well, I'd like to see a commitment to implement all of the 42 obligations that are identified in the report. And I would like the Minister of Justice to realize that we need accountability. He speaks about reconciliation and healing, but he doesn't talk about accountability. And that's what survivors and Indigenous people want. They want to see some accountability for the harms that were perpetrated against their children.
I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier in our conversation. It's an important one. Your report calls for wide access to residential school records. Why has it been such a challenge for families to get those records?
Well, there's a complex web of legislations, provincial and federal legislation, privacy laws, access to information laws, library and archive laws, laws around the destruction of records. Churches are hiding behind privacy laws that don't apply to them, and it's sort of this whole maze that communities and survivors are having to go through. Now, I want to recognize that there have been some of the churches and some of the archives have been very open, have entered into agreements, and it is possible to get those access, but too many are still blocking access for communities. I mean, we have an urgent need to have an Indigenous data sovereignty strategy in this country so Indigenous people can get their records back.
And amongst your obligations, you talk about full reparations and compensation for family members. Do you know what kind of a cost that would be, what the government and Canadians should be prepared to pay?
It's not about the financial compensation. Reparations include many things, and I speak about this a lot in my report. The need for public education, the need to correct the historical records, the need for commemoration and memorialization, to have memory laws so that this never happens again. Those are all part of reparations. Too many people are fixating on compensation and more money given to Indigenous people. But, I can say that the Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement and the compensation that was provided was to survivors that were sexually and physically abused in the institution. Families whose loved ones were taken from them and died in these institutions and never returned home were never compensated. those families and communities were never compensated for those losses of those little lives. And our apology that was issued by the Prime Minister at the time had one line in it about the children that died in the institution, one sentence. And so absolutely, reparations includes some restitution and compensation for those families and communities, for those lives that could have been so much if they had remained in their communities.
And to that point, you recommend in your report more apologies, not just from the government, but university, medical organizations, media. What would they need to encompass?
Well, first of all, they have to acknowledge their own complicity in the Indian residential school system and these other institutions, with the medical profession. And they've taken first steps in relation to this, looking at their involvement in the medical experimentation and how they benefited on those medical human experimentations that they did on the children in the institution. I think there's a need for media outlets to look at their own history of reinforcing stereotypes and discrimination and racism against Indigenous people with the way they've reported, all the way back to the operation of the Indian residential schools till today. There are precedents around the world where media have made recommendations in New Zealand, for example, in how they reported on Indigenous people in New Zealand. Universities, were involved in those medical experimentation. Their institutions sit on stolen Indigenous land, and those things need to be acknowledged, and they need to think about what kinds of reparations that they could provide to Indigenous communities for the harms they've perpetrated.
Kimberly, you've thrown yourself into this work over the last few years, and you noted in your opening remarks that many recommendations have gone unheeded from other reports. Do you worry that this one could have a similar fate?
Absolutely worry about that. And that's why I made a point of ensuring that I identify the legal obligations. It was important to me to deliver a report to community and survivors that they can pick up the work that I did and go to the international forum and try and get some accountability and put some pressure from the outside on the Canadian government. But I also, encourage all Canadians to become upstanders to reconciliation. Read the report, make a determination for yourself by looking at the evidence that's in the report, and support communities in trying to put pressure on the government to implement these and live up to their obligations that they have.
We have just a minute left. What will stay with you most from what you've learned?
Most importantly, I'll always carry with me the families that I helped and stood next to when they found their missing loved one and did those ceremonies on the sites.
Yeah, goes back to those unmarked graves where we started.
Mm-hmm.
Kimberly Murray, thank you very much for your work and for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Susan.
Kimberly Murray is the independent special interlocutor for the missing children and unmarked graves and burial sites associated with Indian residential schools. She delivered her report yesterday. If you are a residential school survivor or an intergenerational survivor and need help, you can call the Residential School Survivor Support Line at 1-866-925-4419. That's 1-866-925-4419.
Okay, you're going to school in the South, that was crazy to me. It's like you're going down University Avenue, and that's like the main road on campus, and you got the black kids on one side and you got the white kids on one side partying. It's just like nobody mixed, and that to me it was just like we were able, because of the sports thing, to cross over. It bridged a little bit more, and that's the power of sports. Right. And what we do and the platforms that we have is like you win, it becomes so much bigger than rich, poor, black, white, all that stuff.
One of my teammates, we were playing football.
Javen Smith, a football player at Milwaukee High School, says he heard a Tillamook player call his teammate the N-word after getting knocked down during a play.
It did hit me some type of way because, as a person of color, it's kind of just like affecting me.
Smith says he tried not to react, trusting his coaches to take care of the alleged racist remarks, but says they continued.
And then as the game just keeps on going, we got teammates that are not even my skin color getting called N-words, me getting called the N-word.
Justin Brandon leads the Milwaukee Football Booster Club. He says after a player told coaches he was called a racial slur, they met with the referees and Tillamook coaches in the middle of the field, saying that also escalated.
The referee said the same racial slur and, proceeded to use the word again, even being asked not to.
Milwaukee coaching staff said in a letter to families they decided to pull their players from the second half of the game, saying safety of the coaches and athletes is their top priority. Defensive player Jerez James agrees.
If we played any more of that game, I think one of us would have gotten a fight and got injured, and I do not want that for the team.
Tillamook School District responded to these allegations, saying they're investigating alongside the Oregon School Activities Association. They say if these allegations are true in any way, that would go against their standards and would not align with their values as an organization, saying their goal is to always provide safe spaces for student athletes. Brandon says racist remarks are a statewide issue and hopes OSAA can hold players and staff accountable.
You need to be able to coach your players. And, a ref ever uses that, again, they should never be able to ref another high school game in the state of Oregon.
Now, the Oregon School Activities Association says they cannot comment on the ongoing investigation. Tillamook did win the game Friday as they were in the lead by halftime. Back to you.
Honey, come on down to New Orleans.
Artificial intelligence has raised concerns among some school leaders about students using it to cheat, but some teachers are excited about the technology. More than 100,000 students in Louisiana are using an AI-powered tutor to help them learn to read. From member station WWNO, Aubrey Yuhas reports.
A little girl, 6 or 7 years old, is sitting with a laptop, talking to a friendly voice called Amira.
Ready, set, start.
In this demonstration video, the first line of a simple story appears on screen. The girl starts to read.
He will hop.
When she gets stuck, the AI assistant acts like an actual tutor. Amira uses artificial intelligence to try and figure out why the student is struggling. Then it runs through dozens of tested tutoring strategies and jumps in.
There are 3 sounds in this word.
3 boxes and 3 red balls appear on the screen.
Move the first red ball into the first box and say the first sound.
As the girl drags the balls into the boxes one by one, Amira helps her sound the word out.
Ch. Now put those sounds together and say the word. Touch. Super. Let's keep going.
This is just a pre-recorded demo. But here's what it sounds like in a classroom outside of New Orleans, when about a dozen students are reading with Amira. The kids are at their desks wearing headsets that kind of make them look like tiny telemarketers. Just like with the girl in the demo, Amira is coaching each child, offering them personalized help when they stumble.
I thought it was the craziest thing ever.
Michelle Montanino is principal of Johnson Elementary in Gretna, Louisiana. More than half of the school's students are learning English as a second language. That makes teaching them to read even more difficult. Tutoring is one of the most effective ways to catch kids up. But quality tutors are expensive and in short supply. Montanino says before Amira, they just didn't have enough. So last year, the school used the tool to tutor students learning English.
This fills in the gaps so much better, and it's fun.
Amira is AI, so she can help kids in Spanish too. Now, every kid in the school is using the tool several times a week. It's part of the state's larger push to grow reading scores, and it's shown early success. The research on computer-based tutoring isn't clear, but there are a few independent studies that show Amira can help boost students' learning when the tool is used regularly. Adam D. Benedetto says the technology worked for his third graders, and it made him a better teacher.
It was very helpful to have Amira kind of walk alongside me.
Di Benedetto now works for Louisiana's Department of Education and is in charge of bringing Amira into more classrooms. He says by the time the state's 2-year pilot is over,
I think we're going to see some interesting impacts, and we'll definitely have some data to make prudent decisions in the future.
Like whether to spend even bigger money on AI. The company behind Amira says 2 million children already use the tool. Experts caution the technology isn't a replacement for teachers or even all tutors. It can't build relationships with students like humans can.
I'm old school. I still believe people, especially with reading for little kids, that's where it's at.
Montanino, the principal in Gretna, says for that reason, she was skeptical at first.
But this, to supplement good science of reading instruction in the classroom, this is great.
And it's likely to get better because just as kids are learning from Amira, it's learning from them too. For NPR News, I'm Aubrey Uhas in New Orleans.
Now everybody's like, jails ain't tough enough. Jails ain't tough enough. We got to have a death penalty. Jails ain't tough enough.
Shifting now to politics, and all kinds of polls show this year crime and public safety are top issues in the election. That's a big change since the last presidential election when police abuse, racial injustice, and criminal justice reform were front and center. Remember 2020. Saul Gonzalez is the L.A. co-host of KQED's The California Report and offers this story now about crime anxiety vibes.
4 years ago, in the wake of George Floyd's murder by a Minneapolis police officer, tens of thousands of people took to the streets, including here in L.A., a city with its own history of police brutality, to demand change. Proposals to slash police funding, reduce prosecutions, and create alternatives to incarceration were at the center of public discussion. Here's local Black Lives Matter leader Melina Abdullah testifying before LA City Council.
What we are demanding, what Angelenos are demanding, is that we be courageous in this moment. This should be about what kind of world do you want to make?
But leap forward to today, and we're in a full backlash to many policing and criminal justice reforms, a backlash fueled in part by what we see on our televisions and social media feeds.
14 people have now been arrested in connection with those smash and grab style crimes at stores across Los Angeles.
A large group of masked thieves have smashed display cases and stolen merchandise from Nordstrom. That's in the Westfield Topanga Mall.
Georgia Leap says these kinds of criminal incidents, which she acknowledges are troubling, have helped create an atmosphere of crime anxiety.
We're looking at the landscape of panic, and I don't know any other way to put it.
Leap is a UCLA professor who's been studying Southern California crime and public attitudes about it since the early 1990s.
People are reacting to media moments. They don't understand the actual statistics. They don't understand what's actually going on. I think they're looking at their TV screens and the smash and grab at Nordstrom's.
But what are the actual crime statistics anyway? When you study the data about what's been happening crime-wise in LA in recent years, it does get muddled and complicated. Now, to put it simply, after a big spike during the pandemic, violent crime like murders, rapes, and aggravated assaults are down. Homicides by up to 17% since 2022, according to the LAPD. But property crimes like high-profile smash-and-grab retail thefts committed by both criminal groups and bands of youths are also up. One person with first-hand knowledge of that is Los Angeles 7-Eleven franchise owner Jawad Ursani.
A shocking flash robbery inside a 7-Eleven in West L.A.
Ursani's store has been ransacked not once, but twice by groups of young people.
Overwhelming the store, stealing food, knocking down aisles.
Incidents which got a lot of media attention and hurt Ursani financially.
I personally have to purchase the inventory out of my own pocket. It is not covered by any corporate fund or corporation. So when someone steals merchandise from my store, it's like you're taking money out of my pocket.
That's why Ursani has joined other 7-Eleven store owners in supporting Proposition 36 on the November ballot, a measure that would roll back criminal justice reforms passed by Californians a decade ago, like classifying many nonviolent crimes as misdemeanors instead of felonies. Ursani says that change turbocharged retail crime.
Theft is part of business. We get that. But when it exceeds the threshold, that is where the problem is getting out of hand. Where you will see someone come in multiple times a day, taking $20, $50, $100 worth of stuff, and be back tomorrow. We call law enforcement. They take them in, they're out the next day again. and they're doing it again.
Such frustrations about crime are also at the center of this year's Los Angeles County District Attorney's race. Incumbent George Gascon was elected in 2020, promising deep changes to LA's criminal justice system.
You're incarcerating people over and over again and not dealing with the underlying problems.
Those underlying problems, says Gascon, are things like mental health issues and few alternatives to incarceration. But as much of the public has soured on a message of reform, this election year Gascon faces a serious challenge from his opponent, Nathan Hochman. Hochman's leading the polls and emphasizes a tougher approach to prosecution. I caught up with him at a campaign event in Studio City. What's your vision when it comes to criminal justice in Los Angeles County? What is your vision for this place?
So my vision for criminal justice is to balance fairness and safety. So I reject decarceration policies that say, without considering the facts in the law, that there are certain crimes and certain criminals we're not going to prosecute. And I reject mass incarceration policies. I come down in the hard middle.
But some people who've committed crimes and been caught up in the criminal justice system say reforms like reduced sentencing and offering alternatives to prison time are working. They worry crime fears could threaten real progress.
I was given the opportunity to go to a program versus going to being incarcerated. And in that program, it changed my life. It made me the woman that I am today.
That's Robin Williams. 4 years ago, she was arrested for theft. Because of that and other criminal strikes, Williams faced up to 25 years in prison. But she was able to instead enroll in an intensive substance abuse program, which kept her from being incarcerated and gave her a new path in life.
And in these last 4 years, I've been able to connect with my children. I'm also a student. I'm a taxpayer. And this last year, when I went to go pay my taxes, I was excited to see what I was going to get back. And he told me, no, you owe. And I was so excited. And he looked at me and he said, why are you happy that you have to pay taxes? I was like, you don't understand. So many years I took from society. Like, that's a miracle. And here I would have been sitting in prison for 25 years, not giving back, but still taking from society.
Given her experiences, I asked Williams what she thinks about efforts like Proposition 36 to roll back criminal justice reforms.
We are start arresting people. Eventually they're going to get out. So what are we going to do when they come home? Putting those people in jail is not going to change them from coming home and committing another crime. Giving them help to learn how to take care of themselves is what's going to help them.
During times of crime panic, UCLA's Georgia Leap says often quieter criminal justice reform success stories like that of Robin Williams get little to no attention.
We are not interested in the good news, and we've all been raised up on if it bleeds, it leads.
Leap says if we're not careful, we might repeat the mistakes of the past, like over-incarceration and too much punishment and too little genuine rehabilitation, with no lasting increase in public safety.
This is ridiculous. This is thoughtless, this is short-sighted, and we're going to pay for it. We are looking at the pendulum going the other way, and I don't know if people realize the implications of what's going to happen.
When it comes to public perceptions of crime and the public's willingness to roll back reforms, Leap hopes we can just keep the pendulum from swinging too wildly. For KCRW, I'm Saul Gonzalez.
When you don't vote, you can't sit on a jury. You have no right to complain about the police because you won't even go and vote so you can even sit on a jury. As I've said to the cows when I first started to call in, I spent 11 years on a job where I worked for a bank and had to sit in court day after day after day after day. And I watched them select juries. I watched black people going to jail, black people having white probation officers, and the whole judicial system just truncated with white supremacy. And a great deal of it is just some of it could be lessened if black people simply voted.
This election cycle, black and mixed-race women are seeing themselves represented in the presidential race as never before. As exciting as that can be, it can also be stressful, especially when living in a predominantly white area. In Central Oregon, Catherine Steyer-Martinez talked with one Bend resident about how she feels as she gets ready to vote.
Ujima is a program where black kids and sometimes their white friends gather to work on homework, learn from community members, or just have fun together. Like this student playing her clarinet. It's also a place where kids will open up about hard things they're dealing with at school, says Skylar Brown Evans.
I know a lot of my girls are surviving at this point, especially my high school girls, new freshmen. They get treated differently daily.
Brown Evans, or Auntie Sky as she's affectionately known by students, runs the after-school program and is the director of education for the Fathers Group, a nonprofit that supports Black families in Central Oregon.
She is one of a kind. She is really loving and caring and sweet, and I will never, ever forget her. And she will always be my Auntie Sky, that's for sure.
That's 16-year-old McKenna Perrell. She says Ujima meetings and support from the Fathers Group have helped her get through issues involving racism, mental health, and connect with Black culture on a deeper level. Despite being 2.4% of the state population, Black Oregonians are the target of almost 2/3 of reported bias crimes. In Bend, Black people have been dealing with continued racism and anti-Black violence towards their communities for a long time. In 2017, Deshaun Adderley, a 14-year-old kid, died by suicide after he was bullied for being Black at Summit High School. That's where Brown Evans also went to school, about a decade earlier.
Long and short of it, it was tough.
She also experienced racist bullying. Now, as the election draws near, she says racist remarks and aggressions have increased. This summer, Donald Trump questioned Vice President Kamala Harris's Black identity during a Q&A hosted by the National Association of Black Journalists. Brown Evans said it hit her in the gut.
It was like he said it to me, and I took personal offense to it. Like, how dare you question her validity of her race, of where she comes from?
Harris's Black, Jamaican, and Indian identities are meaningful for Brown Evans. She's also Black and mixed race.
I'm a very white-passing mixed-race woman, and so I always was on that cusp of I'm not white enough to blend in with everybody, but I'm also not Black enough, quote-unquote, to be part of family functions.
During this election, she's had to deal with random people, asking for her opinion about the presidential race.
Some people will literally look me in the face and say, "What do you think about Kamala?"
Recently, she said someone, a white guy, approached her in a local bar.
I was out having a drink after work, and out of the blue, he just said, "Can I talk to you about politics? And who are you voting for? Well, why would you ever think a Black woman would be the better choice?"
She tried to continue the conversation and discuss race.
He says, "No, you don't know what you're talking about. I know the Blacks in this town." He used that term, the Blacks. And all I could do was smile.
She enjoyed the rest of her drink and promptly left. As Brown Evans reflects on the election, she repeats a phrase she often says to the young folks during Ujima meetings.
I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. I mean, rewind back even 50, 60 years, this wouldn't have been a thing. Well, here we are. It's 2024. Not only am I a mixed-race Black woman born in the state capital, of which a state had all the rules against me even being here, but I have the opportunity to let my voice be heard. I couldn't ask for anything more in the world.
On a sharp October morning, as Brown Evans votes, she wears her family heirlooms, jewelry that once belonged to her mother and grandmother.
Just right up in there. And it's done. It's done.
After she drops off her ballot, she drives back home, singing with her whole chest. Catherine Starr Martinez, OPB, Bend.
Let me say something that gets to the very crux of the matter, and this may be offensive for some to hear who are not on the side that we're on. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years. Say that again. Let me say it one more time for those of you who didn't hear me. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years.
Good evening. A Henderson home vandalized because of a political sign in the front yard. Thanks for joining us at 11. I'm Denise Valdez.
And I'm Brian Loftus. The man that lives there says he and his wife decided to incorporate the message in with their Halloween decorations, but just in a matter of hours, someone came in and damaged it all with racial slurs and symbols.
8 News Now anchor Sasha Loftus joins us in studio tonight with the family's message.
Denise and Brian, the man I spoke with says this whole experience has been violating and disappointing. He says as election day gets closer, he's seen things escalate. And he tells me no matter your political beliefs, something like this isn't the answer.
Right here, he had written, racial epithets and a, racial slur on there and symbols.
Justin Phelps walks us through an experience that left him feeling deflated.
For this to happen, it was really kind of an eye-opening experience and really kind of hurt.
He says he and his wife put up their Halloween decorations this week and incorporated this political sign. And the following day, he woke up to this.
Well, it's mortifying to come out in front of your front yard and see that.
The sign, his skeleton decorations, and his front door all defaced.
And on here, there was a sign that was glue stick. There was a sign over it that had the N-word on it.
Justin then checked his doorbell camera, which shows a man with a hoodie and a mask committing the crime. He's then seen standing back and taking photos of his work.
I think as a whole, as a country, we've gotten to a point where it's just become way too supercharged and too emotional, and to the point where an adult male would come and vandalize another neighbor's, yard.
Justin calls this an example of concern, no matter who someone is voting for.
I definitely don't feel like this is just a one-sided thing. I think both sides of the political spectrum, it's happening.
And he hopes to see more kindness and respect for everyone.
That's exactly what makes America great, is the fact that we can all have an opinion, we all have a choice.
Now, Justin reported the vandalism to Henderson Police. We reached out to them as well. They say officers are actively investigating this as a politically motivated crime that does not appear to have hate or racial targets. Brian.
Sasha, thank you. The vandalism appears to have happened about 4 o'clock Halloween morning. Anyone who knows anything should call Henderson Police or call Crime Stoppers. Tonight also marking the end of early voting, of course. Coming up, we look at the latest numbers and what you need to know ahead of Election Day on Tuesday.
Let's see, next story. I told a family member about potential election violence. They called this fake news. I said the report was from NPR, and their response was silence. I believe the NPR report about potential election day violence was on the COWS for Compensatory Call-In this past Saturday, 6 days ago.
Possible voter intimidation at a voting location out at the beaches. Last night, 18-year-old Caleb Williams was arrested after police say that he threatened 2 women with a machete outside of the Neptune Beach Library voting location. Rich Donnelly's on your side, taking a closer look at the charges Williams now faces and how people voting are responding to all of this. Rich?
Well, here at the Beaches branch of the library, there does not appear to be any added security a day after an 18-year-old was arrested for threatening 2 women who were campaigning outside of this early voting site. Today, that young man appeared before a judge. That's 18-year-old Caleb Williams appearing before a judge Wednesday morning. Tuesday afternoon, Neptune Beach Police provided this picture of Williams brandishing a machete in the parking lot of the Beaches branch of the library. According to Williams' arrest report, the police say 2 women were afraid of being injured when Williams approached them with the machete raised above his head in an intimidating manner. First Coast News crime and safety expert Ken Jefferson said Williams' actions go beyond free speech.
When you are speaking freely and then you incorporate a weapon or you incorporate a threat of some sort, that's when you've crossed the line. Now it's criminal speech and it's criminal behavior.
Veronica McDougald was one of a steady stream of people who voted early at the Supervisor of Elections office in downtown Jacksonville on Wednesday and said she heard about Tuesday's incident in Neptune Beach.
I work here downtown, and I did feel more comfortable just getting up from my desk and walking down here because I know it's centralized. It's a location that is open, so I did feel more safe coming down here.
Jacinth Lyle chose to vote early with a small group.
With this just being such a emotionally charged election, it's important to come out early because Tuesday there's going to be a clamor. People are going to be rushing to vote.
Judge Mose Floyd set bond for Williams at $55,000 with other stipulations.
You'll be outfitted with a GPS monitor not to go within 1,000 feet of a polling place unless it is for the specific purpose of your casting a vote.
Caleb Williams is due back in court on November 20th. If he was accused of threatening 2 women while holding a machete outside of this early voting site. Early voting in Duval County continues until 7 p.m. tonight. Your last day to vote early is Sunday, and after that, your last chance to vote will be Election Day on Tuesday, November 5th. Reporting live in Neptune Beach, Rich Donnelly, First Coast News, on your side.
Okay, Donald Trump. I say meet your next president. See, all kind of people from the time he started talking. Oh, he's crazy. Oh, he's this. Oh, he won't. Oh, the American people won't accept something. Donald Trump has pulled the hood off of, the sheet off of, the cover off of the system of racism, white supremacy. See, he pulled it off, and he's talking with more clarity than anybody else.
Welcome to the News Hour. We are now in the final full week before Election Day, and there's no clear indication of who has the edge in the race for the White House.
Former President Trump, Vice President Harris, and their running mates each campaigned at full throttle in swing states today. Much of their focus was on controversial remarks made by speakers at a Trump rally last night. Laura Barone-Lopez starts our coverage.
On her way to campaign in battleground Michigan today, Vice President Kamala Harris denounced recent rhetoric from former President Donald Trump and his allies.
He is focused and actually fixated on his grievances, on himself, and on dividing our country. And it is not in any way something that will strengthen the American family, the American worker.
She was referring to a massive Trump rally at Madison Square Garden in New York yesterday, where a racist remark about Puerto Rico made headlines.
There's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah, I think it's called Puerto Rico.
That comment made by comedian and Trump supporter Tony Hinchcliffe sparked major backlash from politicians and celebrities alike, including Puerto Rican megastars Bad Bunny and Jennifer Lopez. Trump's team tried to distance itself from the comment. His senior campaign advisor telling the NewsHour in a statement, "This joke does not reflect the views of President Trump or the campaign." But the campaign did not distance itself from other remarks made by multiple Trump allies who hurled racist and sexist attacks at Vice President Harris.
She's a fake, a fraud, she's a pretender. Her and her pimp handlers will destroy our country.
She is the devil, whoever screamed that out. She is the Antichrist. She's just so impressive. As the first Samoan, Malaysian, low IQ, former California prosecutor ever to be elected president.
In a speech billed as his closing message, the former president himself again labeled fellow American citizens as enemies.
They're smart and they're vicious, and we have to defeat them. And when I say the enemy from within, the other side goes crazy, becomes a sound. Oh, how can he say? No, they've done very bad things to this country. They are indeed the enemy from within. But this is who we're fighting.
At one point, Trump appeared to suggest that he and House Speaker Mike Johnson have a secret that will help Republicans keep their House majority.
I think with our little secret, we're going to do really well with the House, right? Our little secret is having a big impact. He and I have a secret. We'll tell you what it is when the race is over.
Though most of Trump's remarks were light on policy, the former president announced support for a tax credit for people taking care of sick family members, providing little detail. After casting his early vote ballot in Delaware, President Joe Biden called the Trump event simply embarrassing.
It's beneath any president, but that's what we're getting used to. That's why this election is so important.
Trump defended his Madison Square Garden rally while campaigning in Atlanta today.
Last night we had a great rally at Madison Square Garden. And sometimes I'll use a little bit, not hard foul, but soft foul. We call it soft foul. But, you know, to emphasize something about somebody's capabilities or whatever I might be talking about.
Senator J.D. Vance dismissed the backlash to the comedian's racist joke about Puerto Ricans before heading to a rally tonight in Racine, Wisconsin.
I haven't seen the joke. Maybe it's a stupid racist joke, as you said. Maybe it's not. I haven't seen it. I'm not going to comment on the specifics of the joke. But I think that we have to stop getting so offended at every little thing in the United States of America. I'm so over it.
Meanwhile, at stops in Michigan today, Harris visited a semiconductor plant and touted some 1,300 new manufacturing jobs coming to the town of Saginaw. It's the latest in a string of swing state events focused on her economic proposals.
I'm going to create basically an opportunity economy task force for Puerto Rico.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz addressed manufacturing workers this morning in Manitowoc.
Kamala Harris and I have a plan to build the American industrial strength powered by American workers.
An ABC News Ipsos poll released this weekend shows Harris with a slight edge nationally, indicating she's the preferred candidate among 51% of likely voters, compared to 47% for Trump. Polling averages continue to show an extremely tight race as we close in on Election Day. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Laura Barone-Lopez.
4 more years. DT. Gus T. Renegade. Context of White Supremacy. In for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the global system of white supremacy, information for non-white people, victims of white supremacy. Today's date, Saturday, November 2, 2024. So I have been told. Still on location in San Francisco and actually on my job. I would have preferred to have had my footies on, pajamas, been chilling, my feet up in my hotel room, which I could have done. That's what we did the book club on Thursday. But I got stuck. Why did you go to California? Jonestown. The main library, that was one that was on my list because they have boxes. You have to go to the special room. They give you white gloves. You can go through their archives for Jonestown, People's Temple, all of that. Zebra murders, all of that. So I'm literally 6th floor, main library, massive facility. And I got boxes, literally boxes of, stuff on the mayor and Jonestown and all of that, white gloves, magnifying glass, man. And so it takes time to go through all that. So I've been there and I'm going through and blah, blah, and all. You even have to send the white people down to go get the material and they bring it back to you and all the rest of it. Anyway, it got to a point where it was like, man, I can leave now, go back, put my footies on and be chilling, or broadcast here and we'll just have to kick it in front of, I believe, that City Hall and just do the broadcast, which is not, punishment. It's just not as cool as having my footies on. But be that as it may, the odd thing is that if this is City Hall, which I think it is, they light up City Hall in 49ers colors, red and gold at night, which, how cute. They don't do that in Seattle. How cute. How cute. I have to take a picture of that before I skedaddle. Anyway, on location in California. It's been a week and a half that I've been down here in California. The first 8 days I was in Los Angeles, and then since Wednesday I have been in San Francisco. Jonestown Research Project proper. Still doing the compensatory call-in. Dial in the number 605-313-5164. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. I will say, man, I was really anxious about going because this is a business trip. I said, what was I doing today? I had white gloves on in the library on a Saturday afternoon when it was sunny. They had a farmer's market at Embarcadero. I could have been out on the pier and getting some fruit and doing it. I'm at the library with white gloves, pictures of Jim Jones and a magnifying glass. You heard the audio segment. They were talking about the election and Trump's racist remarks about Puerto Rico. And they said, we're going to have this Samoan. They're making all the racist remarks, deliberately messing up the racial classifications for Kamala Harris, VP. And they said this low IQ female who's trying to be the first attorney from California to be president. She was district attorney where specifically? San Francisco. There was so much that I thought, like, in terms of the reasoning to go, and even what I said specifically, like day by day, hour by hour, this is what you're supposed to be doing, boom, in LA. This is what you're supposed to be doing in San Francisco, and boom, 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 boom. The election was part of it. Even when I was whining and anxious and didn't really want to go, I said, man, for this business, really counter-racist business research trip, that election, California is always, they talk about the Electoral College, California is always a significant location to be for U.S. presidential elections, much less, hey, this is her former district. I even said that, like, it would be great, get down there and just see what's the support like. Does it seem like white people are talking in support of her? I just saw a report today. I shared it. They said it seemed like the support for Kamala Harris is lagging here in California. I said, ooh, can't blame that on the black people, I don't think. That sort of thing went, and hey, since I've been here 4 days, San Francisco, I walked down by the pier, Ferris wheel. They had banners, plural, for Donald Trump. I'll be back. Terminator, right? I did not see nary a banner for Kamala Harris. Not one. This is her former district. It's got to be some people who remember, like, oh yeah, I remember she was district attorney and tried to do right by us and get crime off the streets of San Fran and all that. Maybe that is here. I've only been here 4 days. Maybe that's here. But I easily, without looking, I took pictures. I saw multiple Trump banners. I'm going to find me some, we going to see. We're going to see between now and Tuesday. And it was already planned. I got my tickets. San Francisco Museum of Modern Art on Tuesday. I can go check out the Carl Walker exhibit. And they have other exhibits about racism too. And I'll be there for the election. I can snoop, ask people their thoughts. What you think about the election? What you think about old former San Fran DA Kamala Harris? What you think about you and her, all that, see what they think? I am looking forward. Matter of fact, let me even give you a research one. So I'm in the special collections history room that's at like on the 6th floor. And I go to get assistance from the librarian. And she, goes to get the box and everything. Like I said, they have to go and ferry. I guess they keep the boxes down on a different level and all that, real labyrinth that you have to go through. Anyway, a different librarian. I didn't even know she was a librarian. I thought she was the mother of a different patron who was in the library. That's what it seemed like to me, because it seemed like they came in together. And they both looked like they were non-white to me. I think they were both non-white. And they looked like, but more importantly, they looked like they came in at the same time, like they were seated together, which they may have been, but it just happened, she was the librarian, he was patron. Anyway, she comes up to me and she says, oh, where are you from? I said, Seattle. She says, oh, wow, that's a long way to come. When did you come down here to research? I said, Jonestown. I've been studying that. That's so interesting. I want to learn more. I said, come to the epicenter. I said, Jonestown, and then the assassination of Dr. Marcus Foster, superintendent in Oakland, and then the zebra murders. She got really serious. And she was not a big person. She's kind of short. And I guess I'm over 6 feet. So it was quite a bit of a height difference. So I kind of leaned over on the desk, but I could see in her eyes, she got very serious. She said, And her voice got very low. And I'm accustomed to this with non-white people, any non-white people, black, so-called mixed race, biracial, pretend black people, the whole gambit. I'm very accustomed to this. I know this well. Even my parents, where they get very quiet. Can I ask you something? So sure, no problem. The zebra murders. Do you think that's racist? And I said, well, what do you mean? She said, well, I mean, zebra murders? What? They call it the zebra murders? I said, oh, that part, I got you. I said, yeah, I do think that's racist. And she said, how do you explain that in the catalog? You know, like, did you just put it there, zebra murders and all that? And I remembered, then I was remembering they did have a notation in the library catalog about this name, this label being racist. And I said, that's great. Just, point it out. And I said, hey, you really could point them to articles from that time period, because lots of people, contemporaries, when all this was happening, they said this, they had the same criticism, like, what in the world? That is totally racist. I don't want to hear anything about no radio frequency or nothing else. You didn't do that for the Zodiac Killer. This, and you picked an African beast. Like, they don't have zebras in California. Why did you pick zebras? Come on. No. And I said I would just point that out, that people said this of that time period, and even point them to some of the articles. And I said, and you could put it in quotes too, to make sure that, hey, this is what they called it then, and this is the lame justification that they gave, but many people then and now think that this is racist. You could just say that. She said, yeah, it's... Just, she said, I'm trying to think of her phrasing. She said, you can put the quotes on and all that, but that doesn't seem sufficient. That wasn't what she said, but that's like the spirit of what she was saying, that's not sufficient. Just putting the quotes up and all that. And I said, I get it. But I would make sure, hey, people of the exact same time period, they had the exact same thoughts that you did. And that became, and I said, some of this is in like the mainstream papers, because she was talking like the Berkeley Barb and other local papers, which is, that's fine. But I was like, this even got articulated in the San Francisco Chronicle and the Examiner, because so many people said, why is it the zebra murders? Come on. Why is that the label for it? Anyway, that became part of the dialogue of all this. I think one of the other librarians said that she grew up next to where Jim Jones lived, and, how wacky all of that is. Anyway, I cannot wait. So many more libraries to visit. And I have boxes. I have to come back to this library. They have, I think, 8 boxes of material. Some of it's video cassettes. I think they have video players here. Zebra murders. Jonestown. Jim Jones specifically. Assassination of Dr. Foster. Can't wait. Research, man. Research projects. Can't wait, man. Anyway, and even too, so I'm, getting my material together. The same non-white female who asked about the zebra murders and, do you think this is racist and blah, blah. Before she got to all that, she said, are you the person that asked for the letter, Jim Jones' letter to the mayor? I think it was Mayor Aliota, about getting voters and people to come and support his campaign. I said, yeah, that was me. And she said, wow, you are the only person who has ever asked for that letter. I said, I don't know what to make of that. That's a shame. That's what I was thinking, like, Jesus Christ, like, you got all this and City Hall is right across the street, and some people say, I mean, hey, the mayor was killed after Jonestown. Maybe that's a major disgrace that Gus had to come all the way from Seattle to be the first person. Can I see that letter? And it seems she echoed the sentiment, like, it is kind of important. I mean, dang, yes, it's very important. I don't know if that's reason enough to come from Seattle, but yes, glad thus far I have survived, and reminded me why I even took the trolley car from the hotel to the library, which was kind of fun to be reminded. I told you I used to live in San Francisco, so this is not like, oh, I've been to this library before. This is not like, ooh, I've never seen this before. It's not that at all. It's more like, oh, wow, look how, mostly it's not even been, look how much it's changed. Mostly it's been, wow, this place looks exactly the same. Some upgrades, what have you, but generally speaking, it looks exactly the same. Better or worse? Take it out how you feel about that for San Francisco. Anyway, and the uniqueness, that's what I was reminded of. No place looks like San Francisco. Like, I know people who have visited both say that Seattle and San Francisco are sister cities. They have a lot of similarities, which is true, but San Francisco does not look like Seattle or any place else. It is very unique for like a billion, like it's so tiny and dirty. And the bay is right there. It's got the water on both sides and the bridges and it's in the hills. There's so many things that are unique. It does not look like any place else. That's not a whoopee. That's not a judgment. It's just a fact. No place looks like San Francisco. No place that I've been. Any hoodles. Research, more reading. They have a statue. I've been told the first statue to a black female in the city of San Francisco is literally about 10 yards, 10 meters from me. It is of Maya Angelou. I forgot that she spent some of her formative years in San Francisco. In fact, the book that they are reading for the San Francisco Public Library is Maya Angelou. Doctor, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. I dusted my shoulders, really, both shoulders, because one, we already read that Catherine Massey book club decade ago in the archives right after she passed. Two, I picked up another Dr. Angelou biography because of Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat. I had to see that film 3 times to get the title right. Bang. Got the book while I was in the theater. And so I'm in the San Francisco Library, and they have a whole section to Dr. Angelou. Great, whoopee. I looked for the book that I got. Whew, dust the shoulders again, because the book I got was not there. Whew. That even ruffled my feathers a bit. Metaphor, because I was there for something else, to be like, whoa, 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 whoa. What is up with the Gap, man? We are at this major library. You got millions of dollars. San Francisco, they brag about being a literary city. Fill out the catalog, man, because that is an important Lumumba's name on page after page after page. I'm going to the UN and riot, and you didn't put that book up there? Come on. Tell me something. You got that on order, right? That one's coming, right? Y'all gonna read that one next month? I'm hanging out for 30 days, so this is not one. I didn't miss my opportunity. Like, I could change my mind and do this tomorrow or Monday or Tuesday. More reading. More reading. Any hoodles. Let's see. We'll get to the news clips. I did at least want to say, quick word. Flippin' Los Angeles. I'm so glad to be gone. I mentioned that on the previous programs, but man, I'm so glad to be gone. It is so stressful and just unhealthy. The air quality alone in Los Angeles is just staggering. One thing that I will say, since I mentioned Seattle from the San Francisco perspective, at least to this point, you have to check in. Let's see. So when we get to November 23rd, 3 weeks from now, I think, you have to ask me again, did you pack well? And I'll let you know. But at least at this point, I would say, yes, I packed well. I packed knowing it would be substantially different weather in LA as opposed to San Francisco, and packed for both. Even packed for rain in San Francisco. It rained yesterday. Check. Thus far, excellent job. Packing, have not missed or lost anything. You have to check again in 3 weeks and see if that holds. Anyway, a part of my great packing, I said I have to have summertime hats for LA, keep the sun out of my face, enjoy being back in summer weather, so I got a Seattle Supersonics hat. I knew I would be homesick for Seattle because I was homesick before I left, so I'll at least have something to remind me of Seattle. That was the best move, and that hat let me further know Los Angeles is a really wretched place. I cannot tell you the number of people. It was like every day. Oh my gosh, I love your hat. Oh, I love Seattle. Or I love the Supersonics. Mostly it was, I love Seattle. Did you come from Seattle? I love Seattle. Literally. I was on the subway last Saturday. It was about half of the people on the subway car looked up. One white man, he said, "Oh, can I buy that hat from you?" And I was like, you have got to be out of your mind, which is what I thought about everybody in LA. I said, "Oh man, I lived in Seattle. I love Seattle." When he said that, it was about 5-6 people. Yakima, Pierce County, Spokane, Tacoma. I was like, whoa. You are going to get these crazy Angelinos riled up and they will kill us all. Like, I love Seattle too, but shh. They got off and it's like 206. That happened so many times while I was there. That further let me know. I mean, it would just be, oh yeah, Seattle's cool, but I mean, it was an even trade. That's not the case at all. I got the experience from everybody like, oh, worst decision of my life. What was I thinking? Los Angeles for Seattle, which is exactly what I would think. Oh, worst decision of my life. What can I do to get back? Can I crawl? Can I sell orange? I was telling Cow's listeners, man, I was having nightmares. I was going to be out in front of Intuit Dome selling oranges, stuck in Los Angeles, can't get back, and I'm, trying to just scrap to survive, see if I can get a bus ticket, walk, hitchhike, at least get to San Francisco and, try things out from there. But I was literally, I couldn't even wrestle. I would have images of me with my bag of oranges out in front of Intuit Dome. Citrus, black brother, citrus. Never going back to LA. I will say they mentioned the report. They spoke with some of the scholars from UCLA and talking about the crime reports in terms of how that was impacting voting. Wow. I went to UCLA. I went to do research. That was it. I went to USC for a function, UCLA just to do research. I was not impressed with their campus at all. It's USC all day long. But wow. I went on the research catalog. This will only mean something to people that do research. You don't really do research, whatever. Just to give you an example, in Seattle, if you do a search using the ProQuest catalog to look for information constructive, they'll say something like, we're searching 2 databases. If you move and you go to the University of Washington campus and do the same search, same catalog, it will say, we're now searching 83 databases. Much better, much more likely to get something, right? I'm at UCLA, which I said, this place is not even impressive. I go to the catalog and just glance to see how many databases are we checking. 157. Woo. That was a reason to slow my complaining about Los Angeles. For someone who researches where you already think you have, pretty good search capacity, for it to double just because now you're on the campus of UCLA. And what does double look like? Wow. Everything that I just said. So put in zebra murders now and see what and you're in California, so you get access to all the Cali stuff. Wow. And just put in anything, because the databases have doubled. So put in Patrice Lumumba and see what you get. Wow. UCLA is public, unlike USC. If you ever get stranded in Los Angeles, make time to go to UCLA. It should be at least one thing that you are curious about. That is a great spot to research. And they have books there by the heaps, digital copiers. I'm not really impressed with the library like at all. And I didn't see any black people except when I went to the bathroom to look in the mirror, and the privileged black dudes who were emptying the rubbish bins. But that notwithstanding, UCLA is prime. And the Black Panthers, right? Bunchy Carter got killed right on campus. Like, excellent spot to do counter-racist research. I would have never thought that. I never went to UCLA before, but now I have. And the same thing happens like when I'm at the University of Washington, where if you take your computer and you log in, when you leave for a period of time, your computer will still respond as though you're on campus. Man, I woke up this morning and was just downloading till the wheels come off. And then I can go to University of Cal Berkeley and see what their database looks like. Find something to research. That's another one. You can't tell me that white people are ignorant about racism, because they don't really have that many black people at UCLA. So who is reading all this material on Jonestown, Black Panther Party, Jim Jones, zebra murders? Who is reading all this material? Because they don't really have that many black students in the student body. Usual suspects. Same thing will be true for Cal Berkeley. And I mean, I have been told Cal Berkeley is a repository for a lot of Malcolm X speeches, audio, video, racks. I mean, he came here to do speeches. I didn't take advantage when I lived here, but I'm going to have to at least steal a little bit of time to see if that's true, because I think some of that material is public. Like, you can just go watch, listen, learn local history, take advantage, go to your local institutions, because they have so many resources. Take advantage. The news that we heard this week, clip number 1, the documentary Dahomey. I saw that last week when I was in Los Angeles at the film festival, and filmmaker Matty Diop was there for the Q&A. That was one of the first. That film, it was one of the first films that I saw. So much happened just in the 7 days since I saw that film. I'd almost forgot that I saw it. And it was amazing. That was when I said they get the statue is speaking. The statue is not speaking French. Everyone else in the film, French. Not the statue. 26. Amazing film. I'm so glad I was able to see that. And then when she was at the Q&A, she said, I too, because she talked about how she thought this film was important for her to do, because it's normally the colonizers, white people, who are telling this story. She is non-white. And she said, I thought it was important for us to have the voice and be in control of how this is going to be told. And she said that I too am a victim of the colonial stigma. That is the only Q&A that I didn't participate in. If I had got in line, that was going to be my question. What do you mean you have been the victim of the colonial stigma? What does that mean? Por favor. Merci. There's the French, Spanish. Anyway, but I just saw that. If you get an opportunity to see it, it is amazing. In fact, they were rushing her when the film ended. She was running up the stairs, and they said, we have another review to go to, can't talk, love you, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, literally, it was like we were chasing behind her, to hear what she was saying about the film. But if she had been just chilling, hanging out, I would have had to ask right after the film the question I just said. Let's see. That was one of the few times, like very few times, that I did not get to hang out in the Q&A and ask a question. Let's see. The report on the Canadian children that were experimented on, non-white, I did not know, or this is the first time that I've heard about medical experiments being carried out on non-white children in Canada. There should be racks of books, articles, documentaries, all of that. I mean, wow. We read medical apartheid, but I mean, let's add to it. White people do the same thing all over the world. What were the nature of the experiments? How long did they last? What were they trying to learn? Where are the published reports from these experiments? All of that, all that. They should get a big, pretty museum and put that there. Documentary on that. Like I said, documentaries. Have that at the Seattle International Film Festival 2025. Front row. I'll be there for that one. Front row. I can ask questions. Medical experiments. She said it twice, too, when they were talking about all that. Medical experiments on the children. That's one for sure. I don't want no dilly-dallying about the records and excuses and, we got HIPAA and we can't really... No. Transparency, man. Only things done in the dark shall come to light. You get all biblical on them, but we need to see it all. We need to see it all. And immediately. And who did this? The names, all of it. Because, that's a whole lot of white people in white lab coats. Henrietta Lacks, we've heard all this before. Let's see. And the force disappeared, the use of language where they said these non-white children, they were disappeared. As in something was done to them. That even reminded me of the book we're reading, Andre Bluing. These people had parents and family. These people were stolen and taken. And then they go and erase, obfuscate, move. So I said minimize, obfuscate, and omit, lie about the records about all of this having happened. Disappeared. I thought that was so brilliant and important, explaining different use of the word disappear and what's happening here with these non-white children, because it's the same pattern that they do all over the world. Let's see. The segment on Lafayette Square, that's in Los Angeles, while they're in the midst of doing all this hoopla about the World Series and whoopee us and yay LA, you got black people who are right there saying, them extending the metro line. We think they're coming to take our housing, eminent domain, even though they keep saying, no. You all are being foolish. We're not even going to mess with your house, and that's not in the plans. And they're totally correct to be suspicious, given the long history of this sort of mistreatment. They even said, hey, all of this came out of these houses because they wouldn't let black people live amongst the white people, even black so-called celebrities. We read about Nat Turner. That's in The Warmth of Other Suns, Isabel Wilkerson's good book, constructive book. The segment Remnants of the LA Smog, the segment where they talked about voting. And it says so-called black and mixed race women in Oregon. Mixed race is in the word guide. Mr. Fuller recommends not using that term. That notwithstanding, they talked about how hard it was for these young ladies in school and the comments and things that people make. Oh man, when they had Miss Brown Evans and she said she went to the bar, now she's older obviously, she said she went to the bar after hours, after work, right, happy hour, and she said a white man came up and said, hey little brown sugar, you think we can talk about politics right quick? That is exactly why I've said, what is it, for years, even before we read I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, I said, worst combination in the known universe, white people, alcohol. That is an act of terrorism waiting to happen. You're at the bar, a random white man with an alcoholic beverage in hand comes up to you. Can we discuss politics? You already know. This is an invitation for him to call me a nigger. Me and Al Sharpton probably. I'm going to get, and matter of fact, this is probably white Jesus punishing me. Because I know I'm not supposed to. What that coon say at the end of every program tonight before you set that clock back? You know what it is. Sobriety would be best. That's what it is. That's the creator getting at me anyway, because what are you doing at the bar? Did you expect something constructive? That you thought that white man was going to come up and, look here, let me show you how I can help you get 500,000 frequent flyer miles for free. Look here. Or let me show you how I can get you a raise on your job. Or let me show you how I can cut your mortgage payments. You'll finish it off 5 years early. Something constructive. At minimum, I'll show you how to get the leaves out of your yard 20% faster. Something constructive, not let's come up and have a dialogue where I have justification to call you a nigger. Come on. Come on. No need to be at the bar, and it's no need to talk. And matter of fact, I would say, hey, on the code, she stayed too long. Victims Guaranteed qualified VGQ, but she says I have no idea what she thought he was going to say. Let's talk about politics with a beverage in hand, not a book, data. We're going to do this in a scholarly manner, courteous and all that. I got me, fifth of Jack Daniels, shot of tequila. Let's talk about old Kamala. No, thank you. I got it. Matter of fact, she says she finished her drink. It's not even worth, because real talk. Swango. Sade Robinson. Real talk. You don't need to finish the drink. Sade Robinson. That's further punishment. If you got a really expensive drink, that's further punishment from white Jesus. Man, at minimum, I say if you got to consume, go to your residence. You can go get whatever you got to get and go to your house. That way you don't have to worry about some intrusion from a race soldier that you did not plan to be in this person's presence. She stayed too long. Victims Guaranteed qualified, but I mean, that situation could have got ugly. You heard Caleb Williams, man, 18, had a machete. You don't know what this fella had at the bar. You know he had a drink. Caleb Williams had a machete. He out threatening people at the library. Think you gonna cast the ballot for Kamala, you better think again. Now tell us that's fake news, right? That was an 18-year-old white dude. He barely can. I think this would have been his first time to vote is this year. And he out with a machete. Come on. Come on. Yes, I'm going to have a plan about voting and all that being safe.
Okay. Woo, lost my Wi-Fi signal. Can't believe that. Well, I guess I can believe that. I guess I can believe that. That the Wi-Fi signal would go out, being that this is not my typical setup. But dang, next time I will know. Stay in the hotel, although I did get caught up with the research aspect of it. I guess do the research on a day where there's no program, then I won't have to be worried about time constraints. Anywho, make sure, got sidetracked with where I left off at in some of the notes. So yeah, LA, they're moving the black people. They were moving the black, well, they were concerned about being moved. That was it. They were concerned about being moved in LA. Eminent domain, which I totally, 1,000% grasp why they would be fearful that sort of thing would be taking place. in the midst of all the celebration about the Dodgers, these black people are saying it is causing them to miss sleep and have all kinds of anxiety worrying about their housing situation. It's been generations of that. White people having us are always squatters ready to move, as Fuller would say. Let's see. The segment where they were talking about crime, and some of that even they were talking about in the Los Angeles area as well. And they spoke with, get his name, Nathan Hochman, if I'm saying it correctly, H-O-C-H-M-A-N, Nathan Hochman, where he said he's in the hard middle. I've never heard that phrase before. I'm not the smartest person in the world, but hard middle. I've heard hard line, hard margin, but hard middle? What does, I don't even know what that means, especially in the context of crime. They got all these metaphors, and that was the one where they were saying the pendulum is swinging wildly, and we hope the pendulum doesn't swing too far. What are you talking, and I mean literally, what are you talking about? Be specific. I mean, explain it to me like I'm 6, because I have no idea what you all are talking about, and if this is going to involve locking up more black people, non-white people, just say that, one, if that's what you intend to do. If that's not what you intend to do, because I think Mr. Hochman, he said that he was also not for mass incarceration policies. So just tell us what you intend to do. I don't know what the hard middle is and all the rest of that. Just break it down for us with as much specifics and detail as possible. They said when Donald Trump came out to speak most recently, he didn't have a whole lot in terms of policy details. It was just the rhetoric and the splash of it all. White people will drown you in some rhetoric, most of the time racist rhetoric. You want details. That's why I say, man, leave those metaphors. Most of the time they reinforce white supremacy, racism. Details, please, and plenty of them. Then we can inspect and see if this makes any sense. It's logical. It's even truthful. Number one, is it truthful? And then we proceed from there. Let's see. Anything else? The election coming up on Tuesday, like I said, hopefully we'll be broadcasting. I have stable Wi-Fi set up with no guesswork about it. But the intention is to broadcast on Tuesday to just kind of see what all is happening with the election a little bit later in the evening. Might be right at normal time, 8 p.m., or it might be a little bit after once things start being tabulated so we can kind of watch the results. But looking forward to being here Tuesday. I can't stress enough, no arguments with your attempted family, other non-white people. Man, no brawls on the job. Get through Tuesday safely. You should have little to say about this. Nothing to debate, argue about. I don't even know how many questions I would have for someone, white or non-white, at this point. It would just be about safely getting through Tuesday. The way I felt about getting Los Angeles, safely exiting the city, period. Like, nothing else really matters. And, I mean, I would not encourage having, any sort of long, fuming arguments or discussions with a non-white person about Kamala Harris or any aspect of the election, any aspect, whatever opinion that they have. If you're going to vote, you're not going to vote, and they want to fuss about that or any other stance, VGQ, this is a time to invoke VGQ, nothing to brawl about. We have more important than Caleb Williams, 18-year-old with a machete. We got bigger problems, man. We'll have to talk later if it's going to be constructive. Anywho, let's see. Folks who dialed in, you'll have commentary to share. Number again, 605-313-5164. The code 564-943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Number again, 605-313-5164. The code 564-943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. We'll see if folks have thoughts on any of the audio segments, the election. I don't know, maybe we have folks who live in the Los Angeles area. If you got to participate in all of the madness with the parade and the riot and all of that, when I saw that they were going to have a parade once the Dodgers won, I was so thankful I was not going to be there for that either. The traffic, the security apparatus of all of that, like I was here when the Seattle Seahawks, when they won the Super Bowl. I didn't go to that parade either and could not imagine going all the way to Los Angeles to participate in an even larger, presumably potentially more dangerous event. So, no, I did not do the parade, but if you have any Angelinos, if you were out in all of the mayhem and survived it safely, you can let us know that as well. I will take a moment here, see if folks have commentary to share. Let's see. All righty. Much obliged for folks' patience. I said being on location, not in my comfy abodes of Seattle, but thankfully managed. Let's see, our caller who dialed in with a hand up. Do you have commentary? Oh,
yes,
one more time. Oh, yes. Yes, sir. We're hearing you.
Okay. Long-time cows listener. Don't really call in. But I just wanted to talk about my experience with the Mennonites and Amish. They don't really vote in the United States. That's not what they're known for. And I seen a video recently of them in Pennsylvania voting for Donald Trump. A lot of people say they vote in secret. So it's amazing to see, like, where no one is going to, when the election comes out and Donald Trump wins, they're not going to blame the Amish and the Mennonites for voting. They're supposed to be apolitical people, but they're voting for Donald Trump, and they're going to blame the black people. Hey, why didn't you vote? All the black men. So I spent a lot of time with them in Belize, Mexico, Colombia now. There's a population of them, and Peru. And they don't watch TV. A lot of them are like horse and buggy type of folks, mostly the Mennonites. But they like Donald Trump. They know about Donald Trump. And it's interesting because they're very, my experience with them is like a lot of racism. And then the other thing about them is maybe what I do like is they don't marry anybody within, they only marry within their own group. And that's all I have to say.
Wow. Much obliged, sir. Wow, I had not thought of the Mennonite Amish voting bloc. I don't think I've seen any reports about their voting habits or concerns this election cycle or any other election cycle, to be totally truthful. I wish folks had got pictures, a video, put that on, the social media and blow that up. Like, man, don't let them come around and be blaming black people in the city of brotherly love about, what motivated them to come out and all that. Because they, like you said, they're not even on social media. Something like they got TikTok and IG, like they got influenced by meddlers from foreign countries and all of that, presumably, right? They, simple people, simple way of life, unless I had been misinformed, but they came out for the Donald. That's what I said, like, man, when I go out and take a gander around, even in an environment that's supposed to be, this is California I'm talking about, supposed to be a haven for Kamala Harris, that's not what I'm seeing. People down here say they're going for Donald Trump. He said the Amish people with the horses and buggies, even they are going for Donald Trump. Like, come on. I mean, come on. We'll have to see, what happens on Tuesday, but man, like, come on. Let's see. I see.
Gus, if you quickly do a Google search on Amish voting for Trump, the PBS, like Fox News, you'll actually see recent results come up, and there is video of them. I can send you the link to your email of them, like of the few that were comfortable to be on camera, like expressing that they're gonna vote for Donald Trump.
Wow.
It's a done deal. Donald Trump.
Let's see if I can find the news segment once I get back and am comfortably chilling in my room. But why? And he said they didn't want to be. What would be the discomfort about it? Like, who is going to, if these are other Amish, as I understand it, it's not like their friends and homies are going to see this, right? Presumably. I mean, maybe they found out about it, but I mean, mail is slow. It's not slow. It's not like everybody's going to hop and text message, and they got the new iPhone. So, I mean, what's the big deal? You know, we voted. This is why. And this is why. You can even catch us up, learn us. Like, what are your concerns? Did he say something that speaks to, you know, problems you all are having or concerns you all have about it? Break it down for us. He's like, oh, okay, wow. I didn't even. Did Kamala Harris, did she do anything? Did she seem like she was going to try and solve any of your problems? And see what they say. Man.
Immigrant.
Man.
They said
4 more years, BT. We'll have to see what happens on Tuesday. Maybe that's an aberration. We'll have to see for Tuesday. I did not anticipate being on this device, so my battery is not supercharged. So, folks, don't dally. If you have commentary thoughts to share, let us know. The number 605-313-5164. Decode 564-943 #. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. If any of folks election commentary from your part of the world or other thoughts, counter-racist suggestions, time goes back 1 hour tonight. Fall backwards, so no confusion. Hopefully, they said the studies that when you move that hour forward and lose that hour of sleep, that has a big impact on traffic accidents and such. The same is not true for when you move the time back an hour, so we can all just enjoy sleeping in. Me being jet lagged and all, I certainly will enjoy extra snooze for my Sunday. We'll see if any other folks have commentary. Folks might be taking their time for a moment. I think, at least for this week, kind of have to take things by a day-by-day basis. Anyways, and definitely while on this venture, by day-by-day, at most week by week. So I think Tuesday we'll attempt the election program, and hopefully I'll have my Wi-Fi. I'll know if I'm in a Wi-Fi stable location, or if I just need to wait until we get back to the hotel room, then I can do it there. But that'll be the plan. Hopefully the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, hopefully they will have Wi-Fi, so I can do the broadcast there about the election. That would be cool to be kind of on location there. But if not, we'll do it at the hotel. Either way, but that's Tuesday. And then I think we should be back for the book club Thursday, I think. Updated things change, and then neutralizing workplace racism and compensatory call-in for next week, I think. Again, had to check. There are other events and things that I'm trying to do while I'm here to maximize my research and such. But since I am going to be here for a few weeks and have a stable spot where I can broadcast, I think I can broadcast while I'm getting my research done. Today was just wacky because I assumed that the library would have stable Wi-Fi when it does not. And I guess that's because of whatever, wacky conditions in San Francisco. Anyway, but at minimum, Tuesday, looking forward to the election. We can see how all of this concludes, hopefully, non-violently. Hopefully everybody will be at a safe location on Tuesday. You can let us know how things go, if it seems like it's getting wild, or if you have any interesting exchanges with your attempted family members, non-white people. I'll give one more check, see if folks have thoughts, observations, questions. I reckon, I'll assume folks are good for the evening. Hopefully we'll be back and stable, so I won't have to use my phone, so I can have better audio quality. And at minimum, we'll get the election wrap on Tuesday. Then by the time we get back to the compensatory call next weekend, I will hopefully have all of that done, an official winner, loser, concession speech, all of that to analyze, and hopefully it won't be any January 6th repetitions over the next few days. Anywho, Gus T in San Francisco, Counter-Racist Research Project. Feel free to drop an email untiljustice@gmail.com if you have questions. Listener even reminded me, said, did you find any of the zebra identification cards? Not yet, but I am going to do my best to see if I can find one while I am here. Think of anybody, San Francisco or Oakland, because that's basically the same city right across the waters. But if you think of Berkeley, any of the above, related to any of those cases, that'd be a good resource to check. Person to try to talk to, any of the above, drop an email, untiljustice@gmail.com. Much obliged. Folks tuning in, hopefully worthy of your time and energy as we move toward the end of 2024. Time has been rolling. Use that time constructively. Sobriety would be best. The so-called holiday season is coming up with Thanksgiving and Christmas, so-called, and New Year's Eve, and they even have some extra ones in there. Sobriety would be best. You do not need an excuse to be out on the road where it's already dangerous. Man, I totally forgot they have got so many self-autonomous vehicles out here. It is so wacky. I suppose that they have these in San Francisco, in Seattle as well, but I don't see them. They are ubiquitous in San Francisco, just all over the place. Like, I've not seen an accident. They've not almost hit me or anything like that, but it's just very peculiar to see them all the time. And most of the time, I think I've only seen them one time with someone who's an occupant. Most of the time, they're just driving around idle, no one even occupying them. Anyway, sobriety would be best. Given our problem, we need excellent thinkers to produce justice. Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. No name-calling, no gossiping, no throwaway offspring. Cal signing out. No name-calling black people. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.